All my friends.
And I think that we had, I really like all the people announcing this on Facebook. We all sort of reconnected. Wouldn't it be nice if we were really close to tell our friends?
Well, I think
And I don't think we understood them as children.
I don't think we understood them as children, and giving our friends both Jewish and not Jewish.
No fault. It's not about religion.
There's no blame.
This is about what we can learn now
In the wake of a San Diego event, I think not only, Alyssa, are you being reflective of some of the stories and memories you have growing up, which is normal, and I'm sharing some. What we're seeing in San Diego is completely different, and you wanted to talk about the New York Times, and that's something completely different. Okay, so we should talk a little bit about the New York Times. The New York Times, and I think on the podcast we'll
we need to describe it. I think it's
No, I don't think everybody knows. I don't think everybody
knows. The name of that newspaper anymore.
Okay, but I don't think everybody knows. But
It's a horrible.
it's an imagery that is classic Jewish blood libel. Again, I'll keep using that word. It could have appeared and did. I found a cartoon that appeared in Der Stürmer, which was a Nazi rag that was run by Julius Streicher. And he was hung at Nuremberg for creating such pictures that created violence toward Jews. And you can look that up. But this classic blood libel that appeared in the New York Times was a picture of Donald Trump wearing a yarmulke,
A blind Donald Trump.
being led by a dog.
Keypad blind live. It was a blind Donald Trump holding the leash, and the collar was around a dog with the face of Bibi Netanyahu, with a Star of David on his collar.
Correct. So basically what that imagery is, and that's Nazi propaganda from Der Stürmer and even before, is that the king of the free world, Donald Trump, is a blind man being led around by Jews by his nose, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Completely untrue. Now, we saw that picture in Der Stürmer where a Jew was leading Churchill, who was the king of the free world, standing up against Nazi propaganda. So this is just repeating it. So before we started the podcast, you shared with me a very personal story that the cartoon in the Times reminded you of. And I want to ask you now to share with our audience, because it is very emotional and you might be teary, but share what you shared with me before.
We are in the time of social media and Facebook. And I think it's really, really important we live in our present and that we take that into consideration, how we get our information, where we get our information. And I think that not only listening to media, but actually listening to personal statements, because we have no idea what it's going to bring up for us.
Right.
I don't know if I can. So I posted on Facebook. How about we read? How about
Sure.
you do that? Because I think it's like hard for me right now.
Okay. Well, no, I think you can read.
Well, I can read my own post?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not very...
Because I don't have my glasses right now, and
You
I'm
can't
gonna
see.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to just quote it completely, what
Please.
I wrote, because I had posted something about the New York Times cartoon reminding me of something that had happened to me when I was 15 years old, and I was in junior high.
Junior high.
And instead, I saw many of our friends posting about gun control, posting about immigration policies. And I didn't see any of my friends even ask me, really? That happened to you? So here's the story.
It's very important, so share, please.
It's a comfortable feeling when I see a globally recognized American newspaper I grew up with post a cartoon of a keypad President of the United States blind being led on a leash by a collared Prime Minister of Israel with a Jewish star around his neck. Well, that's not really how I want to say it. Okay, it's hard.
It's hard. I understand. So, but it's important to get out. So
Yeah.
share.
Okay,
So share from the heart.
What I wrote on the Facebook. The bottom line is that this brings me back to my junior high school graduation,
There you go.
when I gave my yearbook to a friend to sign who had moved from Australia. He never returned it back to me. Instead, my yearbook was found days later with a known anti-Semite made to look like Hitler, with a leash drawn to my photo, and I was drawn...
You can cry. It's okay. It's emotional. All right.
And I was drawn to look like...
You can treat.
This is so
All right. Where is it? And I'll read it.
You can't shaking.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is
Well,
so,
it's very, and I think
so
that, I think
crazy.
to our listeners, this is
this
really,
is an experience of, we need to understand how deep hate goes,
and hate
how
can really
much
scar someone.
how it affects you, and how I never even knew that this was something that had been eating at me since I'm 15 years old.
Well,
And when I saw that cartoon,
really, really hurts.
I can't even begin to tell you the pain. Anyway, I was drawn to look like a dog with a collar around my neck and with that same Jewish star for clarity on my collar. And in big letters, can I say fuck?
Yeah.
It said fuck you Jew. Only it was literally written out. I was 15. It still hurts, as you can see, and it still makes no sense to me. But I do understand hate. I really do. And on that note, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours because whoever can figure out who this human being was, I don't even know who knew the story, but he had contacted me on Facebook many years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't know why he wanted to even speak to me. I mean, he had done such a horrific thing to me, and it was so painful. And there is history now, and it's a long time ago. But the reality of it is that we had spoken, and it was too much for me to be friends with him on Facebook. I know that just sounds so weirdly childish and bizarre. But yesterday I sent him the cartoon, and I said to him, wow, this almost looks like what you did. And that was it. And at 3 a.m. last night, I had this idea. I wrote him because we're now both artists. Interestingly enough, he's a painter. And he...
In Judaism, you know, as terrible as people can be, I mean, people can ask for forgiveness and do something called tshuva. I think people are only as despicable and unsavable as people who can't recognize that they've done something wrong in the past. But in Judaism, and I would hope in other cultures and religions, if you recognize that you've hurt someone and hurt someone as painfully as Alyssa just shared some personal story, you can reach out and say, look, you know, I was a different person and I'm asking for forgiveness. And and I think that the world grows, and I think that we want to like look at a San Diego experience either hopefully to say, okay, you know, how, you know, let's confront, you know, this real evil and terrible thing that exists in the world, such as anti-Semitism, by expunging it and doing real tshuva. So I hope that that can happen for this person and for you.
Okay, and the reason I'm really opening myself up is this has been quite cathartic, and it's not about me having to out this publicly. I feel there's an amazing lesson to learn. I'm a drama queen, besides the princess I was last week, and I think people just always assume that I exaggerate stories and that I'm not very honest. And I want you to understand that this is such a real story, and that we don't always get that moment to get answers. And last night at 3 a.m, I again wrote him and said, we're as artists, how can we share this experience, and how can it become a place of redemption? And so he's taken his art and more than 30 years later, he's a painter. And it's interesting to me because that was his response. And the title of the piece, and eventually we will show the piece, is 30 years ago, I did a really bad thing to a very good person. And afterwards, there was more dialogue, and I asked him if he could remember anything, because I have a very vivid memory of the situation. And his response was, Alyssa, there is so much pain, I now know, and I'll apologize for the rest of time. I was young and easily led, and being liked was all I was after. It was purely ludicrous behavior by a young guy who could draw. So sorry. And
good for him for apologizing.
I mean, I think...
Give him a lot of credit.
I do. And as I explained to you when we were speaking about it, that we as adults have to be really sensitive about the information that we are putting into the public's head, and especially the youth, and how it affects us, and how us, not the government, not anyone else, but us as individuals, how we need to work through this hate and to look at each other as individuals and look at each other as people, as human beings, as breathing individuals with a heart and a soul and a light. I really feel that the last 24 hours has been about light. It shined a little light for me on a really dark place that I've never really spoken about publicly. I don't think most of my friends know about it from junior high.
I think everybody can relate to it. As I said, there was the one story I remember, but I remember other stories.
But can they relate to it? Because if you're not a Jew, have you experienced that hatred? In Milburn High School, 30 years ago, were Christians feeling a sense of hate walking around?
Well, I'm not Christian, so I don't know.
Exactly.
So I can't say.
And it's interesting because I'd like to put that, what's that, your hand out?
An olive branch?
Yeah, and to say, can you hear this story? And does it affect you, or does it touch you, or can you be open to it and understand that this happened? Like, I feel like people are like, no, that couldn't have happened. It happened. I feel lucky that that it was Facebook. I mean, this guy could have never found me had it not been for Facebook and had this interaction.
Right. So I think that this is really, in some way,
so
shows
relevant about Short Hills and how we grew up, and that this was something.
Right. And there's so many good stories from Short Hills also.
Exactly. So now you're playing the good guy again. But I think that we need to face some of the darkness. We're sorry about the background noise. We're in a subway. There's more to this. I mean, I know you want to go back in history, and I know you want to do more God speak, but I'm speaking, how do we talk to someone that's not religious?
Well,
how do we speak to someone and just say, look how writing a silly picture, right? Isn't it just a picture?
No, it's not just a picture.
It's not just a picture. But they were words written, and there was a picture.
So I think it's a good point to start this conversation in the light of San Diego and how a personal story and you were affected. Sadly, I don't think you were the only one that has a story like this. And
from Short Hills? Do you think other people were affected in Short Hills? I think they were, because we do know of people's lockers being quote unquote Hitlerized. Do you remember that?
No,
I
don't.
Break
I don't
into
remember
your
that.
Locker,
I never had anything like that.
And you'd open it up and it was full of swastikas? Yeah. Oh. Yeah, it happened to a friend of mine.
Okay, so that I don't know, but...
And these are dark. I mean, we don't like to touch that because we did grow up in an incredible place. But I think we need to base ourselves in a reality of what we were experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that one of the important things for me, in my maturation, is that this is why I'm proud to live as an emancipated Jew in a free country that has the ability to protect itself. And the two messages that I take away from this is that, every Jew at 22, meaning that every Jew should arm and defend themselves, and also every Jew should come home, that Israel is your home. And
well, that's a whole other topic, because I so don't believe in it. And I believe that we shouldn't ghettoize, and I think that it's okay to be in America, and we have a history as Jews in America and all over the diaspora, and that's fine. And again, without being in history, let's be human, and let's remember that no matter who you are, a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, Buddhist, whatever it is, like a child only knows the hate that is fed to them.
That's correct.
Even though the guy, let's give kudos to the parents, but I don't know if I believe it or not, but manifesto writer, I won't even give him his name, his parents are really shocked by his behavior. He was a nursing student. I'm sorry, I'm going back to him.
I have to put a disclaimer for not only Short Hills Live, but for me and you. I don't know if this is his words or what those words are. And when you see people grandstand and talk about taking guns away and immigration, this is a whole nother agenda.
It's
so that's being used.
Taking us away from the.
Whether these are his words or not his words, really, it's the act that needs to be punished. And he's an alleged person, now saying these words and things like this. We know in history that these words have been spoken and used. Whether it can be proven that these are his words or it's being attributed to him, let's be careful about that. That's all I'm saying.
Of course, but it's... Sorry, I cut you.
No. I think that it's very, very...
I
that
think
there's
so many parts to this.
Yeah, but there's an agenda going on that would like to use all these shootings, wherever they've happened, to take away people's gun rights.
How did a gun get into a 19-year-old's hand? So I'm angry that there's a gun in a 19-year-old's hand when he has such incredible hate through his blood. At the same point, if there wasn't a guy in the congregation with a gun, that entire congregation would have been dead. His gun jammed. There was totally miraculous happenings.
Let's make this very clear. You are never going to be able to prevent evil from happening in this world. If a person doesn't have a gun, they will pick up and drive a car through a crowd of people. We've tried to end drugs on the streets. Criminals will always have the ability to get guns. No gun law, Alyssa, that you pass will prevent a gun from finding its way into this 19-year-old's hands. All you will do, and I want this to make this very clear to our listeners, is prevent a legally law-abiding citizen with constitutional rights to defend himself from taking action to save others. You cannot legislate against this. It's sad. Tragedies happen in this world, and there will be further gun violence. But people who want to put a nice bow on it and a rainbow and say we're going to make a law that prevents this from happening again are pissing in the wind.
And I'm going to say one thing based on that, and it really... I'm not a really good gun person. I was taken once to a gun shooting place here, actually two, and I had to walk outside. It just really doesn't coexist with my nature, although I really do feel lately that I want to learn some level of self-defense. But
I think it's very important to all...
I want to stop one thing before you speak over my words, and that is, if you're going to take guns away, then I think we also need to shut down the internet. Because what I read is mostly all that information was hate being spread through the internet, and that was even more problematic than the guns. The combination of both and all of this.
So this is a very dangerous line of thinking.
No,
we're not going to take guns away,
right,
and we're not going to take people's freedom to speak away.
Of course, you're not going to take away the internet, but I'm saying to you that logic, that if you're going to take away people's way to defend themselves against lunatics, but all of that lunacy, if the kid didn't get it in his home, he picked it up on the internet. There's like this CHA, there's all these weird... one second, don't jump on me. Hold on a second. I'm trying to prove a point. Is that there are all of these... I was deep in it. I went website after website. There's incredible, hateful websites on the internet. Things that we didn't grow up with. I can't even imagine knowing that if I was angry at somebody, I can actually go on the internet and find out ways how to absolutely destroy them. And that when you have like-minded people together, how dangerous that is. I know that you also have your feelings on gun control. I think that we've heard a lot of our friends have a lot of opinions on gun control, but I think everybody needs to take a step backwards and look and say, who needs to have the guns? Who needs to have the control of these things? However they want to control it. I don't think everybody should have a gun. I'm really sorry. That to me sounds like a big war.
Okay.
But I think that there is... Perhaps, and the rabbi did talk about this, in that the government needs to get in the rabbi did speak, the Chabad rabbi, the victim of that terrible shooting, he did speak that perhaps the government, or maybe I heard it from someone else, needs to up the security at houses of worship, which would mean more guns. But at the same time, what really hit me last night was that I want more control on the internet, to be honest with you. And I don't think that those sites should be able to exist. But then that's taking away freedom of speech, and that's not a good thing either. So this is really someplace where, as good people, Jew, non-Jew, doesn't matter what you are, just it's about light. And it's about good, and we have to keep pushing the agenda of good. That's the only agenda that we really need to push.
Right. So just to respond to that, I think the antidote to bad speech is more speech. So I wouldn't be for, just to clarify Seth Kogan's editorial, I would not be for shutting any of these sites down. Let people speak. Let it have the light, as you're saying, be shown upon it. We want to see what people are saying, evil or otherwise.
Okay, I'll give you that,
Okay.
because I keep myself open and I will listen to anybody, and that's why
And
if you ever want to engage me on the internet, you can. You don't have to just send me a hate, which I also received, was like a really terrible mail, because as you see, Seth is way right. I'm really pretty moderate, but I'm learning, I think being a moderate human being is the person that takes the punches the most.
Okay. And the antidote to people, bad people with guns, the only antidote to that, Alyssa, is to have people have their gun rights protected.
I mean, I do. I mean, I feel that in Israel, I know that people carry here, and they show it, and we know it. It's inevitable. We don't
They're responsible.
We don't have wild shooters, and there's like crazy tests. So maybe America can like take some hints from the way Israel deals with gun control, but we do need those guns, because a lot of the times when a terrorist, and we do have Islamic terrorists and Islamic radical extreme terrorists here in Israel that want to kill us, that it's really important that I know that someone close by can have my back. But I also think that I need to start working on something. And
You
also
might need to
for
work for
self-defense.
defense and also for emotional strength.
I don't want a gun.
Okay, so you don't have to have a gun. But
Do you have a gun?
I don't have a gun, but
Do you want a license?
I would like to have a license. Israel has some very
They're really tough. I
tough gun
remember when
laws.
my friend got his license.
I could
It's
get one
bullshit.
if I moved to the Judea and Samaria. Okay. But there's a lot to learn from Israel for America here. Security at malls, at schools. There's always an armed guard. There are fences around.
Bags always
So we might have to do a little field trip and show how security works here.
And not only that, we have their language, the way you speak to a security guard. We know words to use. It's so weird. We're not taught these. It's just
Israel.
You just know how to say hi. And
Israel profiles, and profiling is important.
in our situation, yes. But it seems that things are getting pretty crazy in America. And I think it was the rabbi that had said if there were armed guards, this would have never happened, but he didn't have the money. And that's even more interesting now that we've been told that we are the richest people in the world, which is not true, but that he couldn't afford the security he wanted for the synagogue.
And this is the sad point. I don't think you should have to, if the Second Amendment rights were observed and people were allowed to carry, which they should be able to, you wouldn't have to hire a guard. Congregants, responsible congregants, and I know plenty of people, as you just mentioned, who walk around with guns all the time and they're not in any danger. No, here. Who are carrying. If you have congregants that are carrying, you don't need to hire someone, because someone with inside the community is going to be able to put it down. We need more of that.
Wow. Well, I feel like I opened my heart and soul and left it on the table here.
I'm really glad that you did.
I just don't really know if this conversation made any sense. I don't know why I'm obsessed with this word light, but I hope that this podcast just shines a little light, that's all.
Yeah, and I hope, my hope is that the San Diego event will create a conversation like we've had, for people to be open and talk about past wounds and how those can be rectified.
And that doesn't mean that I have to pass the hate on. It doesn't mean
of course not.
that I have to be angry at this guy from so many years ago.
No,
It's
he
just,
did, and he
wanna
did
learn
tshuva.
from it. Yeah, and now he has a painting with a title.
So let's see it. Maybe I'll buy it.
Right. 30 years ago, I did a really bad thing.
I'd like to buy it, and maybe we'll put it up on the wall of Short Hills Live. So that's we'll talk about it. All right, so
on that note, we should end on just everything that's manifested. I don't know.
great. Well, this is Short Hills Live in the Middle East, talking about some very painful past topics and current events that happened this week. We hope that you can.
We are able to do this as two Jews, and we can
already hearing from you, so let's hear more from you.
Yes, please engage us. If you totally disagree with this conversation, if you really hate Jews, whatever your feelings are, feel like it. That is Mr. Freedom's speech.
Yeah.
So, whatever it is, engage us, and we will either move on with that.
Yeah, whatever you're...
Figure out that technology.
All right, signing out. Peace out.
Lots of fun.